Hi everyone, welcome to part 22. I just did the bits and bobs. It might get taken down because there was that address shown on the court paper. I usually cover that up. It's my mistake. I hope that it doesn't get taken down, but if it does, I'll just have to kind of explain where I was at with my line of thinking. Um, Again, basically what I'm saying here is that I have everything from the Chris Chrisley thing. Everything. It is not winning. There was depositions. There was all kinds of interrogatories. There were claims she hurt them. She caused Chris Chrisley so much more grief and his family so much more grief than they already were. And why? Because she knew that he was a high profile person in a lot of legal trouble. So the more stories she could do about him, she could tag her videos saying Chris Chrisley, and everybody wanted to know what was happening with Chris Chrisley. So she does that. She basically puts her little hook in anybody else that's high profile and gains traction by doing that, and then is telling what she thinks is tea, but it's actually slander and libel. And it's about time that somebody lets her know what's going on and doesn't back down, because she thinks that she's winning each time, and it is not winning. As you become an adult, you realize that you pick your battles and you fight, and you may lose some of the battles, but it depends on how the outcome of the whole war is, whether or not you won or you lost. And you look at the series of battles, and when she is paying out $30,000, well, she probably made 300,000. So I guess that is winning in her twisted way of thinking. But I would not do this. Would anybody else do this? Nobody would be doing this kind of stuff. I can't imagine all of this stuff going on in the court and having, lawyers basically working full time to try and keep track of everything. So what I wanted to show here is, and this is all public documents, is that if the case, if the how do I say this? If it is true that there is an attorney that became a judge that has a background in drug treatment and child welfare cases, that is overseeing this now civil case, and people are reading into it that, oh, then this judge will be able to see that Katie Joy has a problem. And I need to really express that that's not going to be the case. That if people have concerns, they need to report their concerns to the proper authorities. Although our CPS system is broken here, if people see, and you can see it on, if you have recorded some of the ways that we have overheard that are concerning the way that her child is being treated, etc., or if you have firsthand knowledge of something that you find concerning about her parenting or otherwise, it is important to continue to report. It cannot be assumed that a judge is going to see something and then do something, because that will not happen. That's overreaching. That there's no way that would happen. It just would not. So if we can say that, though, the argument needs to be made. She has an attorney who specializes in divorces and situations where parents have had CPS involvement. Okay, I pulled up all of the cases that Jennifer Moore has done since 91. So we see a lot of harassment. We see disillusion. We see paternity issues. We see domestic abuse. We see child custody. We see more divorces. We see domestic abuse. We see child support. We see mental health. We see estate issues. We see divorces with child custody issues. We see more domestic violence. We see harassment. We see family issues, more divorce. We see more harassment, more child custody issues. We see, okay. We see child, let's see, what would that be in? I'm trying not to show, too much of the names of people because, this it's not relevant. But let's see. I don't know how to explain that in the best way. But we'll just go children, I guess children that were taken away. Let's just say that and put into the system. We see more child custody. We see somebody who was committed for illness issues. We see commitments there. We see guardianship, conservatorship, and remember how Katie Joy, was so excited and saying that she's going to put a conservatorship on her son. Poor child, because that's how she sees the Britney Spears story. She's always got to interject herself into it. So while we're all mortified in seeing what Britney Spears' parents or father did to her, then she sees it as, yep, and I'm going to do that to my son when he becomes an adult too. So he'll always have to have that. And you're just going, So we see that if the judge has those concerns and could do something, well, what do you know? Katie Joy has an attorney that specializes in child custody and child protection issues and accusations of child abuse and mental illness, etc., and harassment. So what do you know? She can get a twofer out of her attorney. That's what her now attorney specializes in, because it looks like Jennifer Moore is more often than not the only person showing up and being actively writing and showing up for the hearings. Okay, so you see there's a lot of civil cases here. You see that now as she's going towards the end of her or more recent aspect of her career, because she's been practicing for a long time, we see that there is employment. She's got an employment, a couple of civil cases. She does have a few open cases. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 there. And let's see over here. What does she have over here? 8, 9. Because we've got this one right here where it's listed under her as the attorney. Okay. So she has less than 10 open cases. And it seems like Katie Joy is keeping her pretty busy. So, if we're going to bring in the background of the judge, well, we'll bring in the background of her attorney. And so then if anything were to come up questionable, well, you know what? She's got an attorney right there on the payroll, right? And then that's where I go over here. And I wanted to show you that when you do a civil case, this would show anybody who has actually had restraining orders successfully placed on Katie Joy. This will not show whether one was attempted and not granted. Perhaps the people who say that they placed one on her were successful in getting that first 10-day one, but then getting that long-term one really takes a lot here, and it is a $900 minimum charge to even file one unless you are in the same home or domicile and it has been proven as domestic violence. So we have a lot of little idiosyncrasies here in Minnesota that, especially in Wright County, that are not the same as other states, counties. Now, again, she has a very similar name to somebody else, a similar birthday to somebody else. And so I make sure to cross out those. So with Katie Joy, we see that there was harassment, personal injury, and civil and other. Now that personal injury is that one with Chris Chrisley. Okay. Now we have the harassment, 4 harassments and these 2 libels. Now it doesn't have Tati in here. That one I'm going to have to work a little bit to get, but I just think that it's time that everything is exposed, because she isn't going to tell us, is she? She's going to sit there and act like everything is just wonderful and that there are no issues, and it's just these people who do this just to mess with her so that she can't say the truth about them, and she's trying to reconcile families, and the families don't want her. The Derricks have said straight up they don't want her helping them with their issues that they may or may not have. Miranda's parents have said, this is a family issue. We do not want your help. And she's saying that she's doing this in order to help them get together. Because what, she's such an expert? Because her marriage is so good that she doesn't even share a bed with her husband. She's quite open about that. Yeah. Tea. I just had to take a sip of tea with that. So, the last order that was actually placed, so this may be what the new hearing on 11/15 will be. And it says it's open. It doesn't say that it's phone. So if it's in person, I will attend that as well. And I will report every detail back to you. So this motion was filed. Says you are notified that an order was filed on August 7th, 2023. This is the last motion that was filed, and it doesn't say much more than that. An order was filed. Okay. That's the only thing I see that doesn't add up to a conclusion so far. Okay, so I'm going to put that over in our pile of things we've talked about. Okay. Now, this one. This is back in the pile of things we've not talked about, but we will. I wanted to go over the protective order. The protective order. Okay, so if you just saw where my phone went, this is the Chris Chrisley, and the way that this one was put out is it was filed as personal injury. And that is because I think that Chris Chrisley really claimed that mental distress and was able to really speak to that in when we see the way that this is filed. It doesn't necessarily go as personal injury. It goes as civil, other. I just haven't seen that term used, which is just something to note. So we'll put this back over in that pile. of all of our light reading, light studying of the Katie Joy current situation. And we'll have all of this that we'll get to after. But for right now, as this was not known to exist, I think that it's important to, at this point, talk about what that means. The protective order, as we've talked about in the previous episodes, was talked about. They definitely wanted it. Okay. Amber wanted it because Katie Joy bragged about wanting this, that she wanted the deposition. She was saying, game on, let's go, because she wants that content. Again, if she's making $300,000, just throwing numbers out there, if she's making $300,000 and pays out $30,000, that's nothing to her. She's winning in that regard. Okay? But at the end of the day, what is your character about? What have you done? And I don't believe her little atheist baloney. That's her throwing a temper tantrum because she didn't get what she wanted when she tried to be religious. She didn't get the accolades. And she had women probably who wanted to help her with her situation. And she doesn't want anybody in that house. She wants the people she has in her house and her to be very private because she doesn't want the truth to come out about how she really treats the people in her home. Let's just be honest. Her escapism is social media. She is absolutely 1000% addicted to social media. And she justifies it to her husband saying, you know what? You're not going to make any money with your band. Somebody has to support this family. Can't you just hear it? And she has everything set up so that the care of her son is done by her husband, who, allegedly, she worked and worked until she figured out how exactly to get him qualified as a paid caretaker. She thinks she has it all worked out, doesn't she? We see right through her. We don't know how. We see right through her. But we do. And that's how we're breaking it down. Slowly breaking it down to show we know what she's doing. And 7M came to play ball. Because as she was bragging about doing this, the judge wasn't sure. The judge was saying, you know what? If this is going on and she's a reporter and she's reporting on these issues that are public knowledge and that are very concerning, then she shouldn't be silenced as a journalist. That would be one way of somebody getting away with something that is criminogenic in nature, and why should she be silenced? It took a long time to get this protective order in place, and it took Katie Joy continuing to reveal what she wanted to see in the deposition and how she was going to do it. And ultimately, she did what we saw in that posting where she was saying, game on, deposition coming next. And Amber Slavik, who was absolutely on top of things, showed the judge, and ultimately the judge did this. So this protective order in place states, okay, and this was placed in February 7th, 2023. So it was not placed in the beginning when they wanted it. It was placed way after she showed what she wanted to do and showed her behavior. And the judge had to see this for what it was, and I'm glad. It's about time. Because we stayed here in the state of Minnesota, County of Wright, the District Court in the 10th Judicial District, in the case type of civil. We have the plaintiffs being 7M Films Incorporated, Robert Shin, Miranda Derrick, and James Derrick as the plaintiffs, versus Catherine Mansky Paulson, aka Katie Joy, Without a Crystal Ball, LLC, as the defendant. She's just one person, but it says defendants because she likes to act like she's got the whole little TMZ crew in there just going back and forth with their typewriters, just working for her. That's just her on her poop brown couch. And it states here, this protective order right here states, the court hereby adopts and enters this protective order as follows, that any party to this action may designate documents and information as confidential in confidential information to protect it within the scope of Minnesota Rules and Civil Procedure 2603. That number 2, highly confidential. So this is how they can designate the material that they put in. They can do it under these different classifications, and the classifications can be highly confidential, and that would be for attorney's eyes only. Hereinafter, highly confidential. It means it is limited to confidential information that constitutes information that the producing party deems especially sensitive and is limited to private financial information, sensitive and private business information, medical records, and personal contact information. Access to highly confidential, attorney's eyes only material shall be limited to counsel of record only and cannot be distributed to clients, the parties, or other individuals. This is important because I've never seen this. And this is important because it's saying that Katie Joy cannot even see this, that attorney's eyes only. That Katie Joy can't even know what is stated in those. And why is that? Because she's problematic. The fact that they won this means they won a battle. How many battles do they have to win before they win the war? How many battles did Tati win before the jurisdictional issue was going to cost her more than she wanted to invest? How many battles did Chris Chrisley win before he determined that he had too much going on where he was going to prison for tax evasion, etc., and he had to walk away from the war? How many battles had he won? Well, let's find out. That'll be our next project. Now it says all confidential and highly confidential information shall be used solely for the purpose of this action, and no person receiving such information shall, directly or indirectly, use, transfer, disclose, or communicate in any way the information to any person other than those specified in paragraph 4. All other use is prohibited. Number 4. Access to confidential information shall be limited to the court and its staff, attorneys for the parties, their law firms, and their outside vendors who agree to be bound by the terms of the protective order. Persons shown on the face of the document to have authored or received it, or court reporters retained to transcribe testimony. Okay. So that's how that information is handled. So we know that there is so much more in this case, but it's deemed confidential and therefore I cannot access it. And now it says the parties. And that is referring to the confidential information that is not listed as attorney's eyes only. Okay? So you got confidential and highly confidential. Okay. So then with the highly confidential, that's attorney's eyes only. Confidential is that. Nonetheless, if it's confidential and it's listed as such, if Katie Joy sees it and knows it, she cannot talk about it. And that is a win for 7M. And it says outside independent persons persons not currently or formerly employed by, consulted with, or otherwise associated with any party who are retained by a party or its attorneys to provide assistance as mock jurors or focus group members or the like, or to furnish technical or expert services and or give testimony in this action and who agree to be bound by the terms of this protective order. Those are other people who can see the information if it is not marked as attorney's eyes only. Side note, I did a mock jury once, and it was so fun. It had catered in breakfast, catered in lunch, and you got $300 cash. It was for a trial that was coming up. It had a pretty big dollar amount attached to it, personal injury case. And it was kind of cool because they acted like they were on different sides. But at the end of the day, you found out that they're both working for the same firm. They're just each acting like that so they can play back and forth on each other with the arguments. And $300 cash, catered breakfast and lunch. That's a lot more than you'll ever get if you're in an actual jury. And let's see. So now we are talking about the protective order and who can see it and what it is. And it says all or portion of documents and information disclosed in a deposition by a witness may be designated as confidential information and thereby obtain the protections accorded other confidential information. Confidentiality designations for depositions shall be made either on the record or by written notice to the other party within 10 days of receipt of the transcript. Unless otherwise agreed, deposition transcripts shall be treated as confidential information until the 10-day period following receipt of the transcript expires. The deposition transcript of any witness or any portion of such transcript that encompasses confidential information shall be taken only in the presence of such persons who are qualified to have access to such documents and information. Or any party who inadvertently fails to identify documents and information as confidential or highly confidential shall, promptly upon discovery of its oversight, provide written notice of the error and substitute appropriately designated documents and information. Any party receiving such improperly designated documents and information shall retrieve such documents and information from persons not entitled to receive them. Upon receipt of the substitute documents, shall return or destroy the improperly designated documents. The disclosure of documents and information that is later designated as confidential or highly confidential information under this paragraph to persons not having the authority under this protective order or to receive them shall not, however, constitute a violation of this protective order if such documents and information are retrieved pursuant to this paragraph. Any party may request a change in the designation of information designated confidential or highly confidential information. Any such information shall be treated as originally designated until the change is completed. If the requested change in designation is not agreed to, the party seeking the change in the designation shall, within 30 days of the requested change, move the court for appropriate relief. The party asserting the material is confidential or highly confidential information shall have the burden of proving that the information in question is within the scope of protection afforded by Minnesota Rules of Civil Procedure 2603. Okay, got that. Within 60 days of the termination of this action, including any appeal or by way of a settlement, each party shall either destroy or return the opposing party all documents containing information designated, look at this, designated Y, the opposing, and they've got a weird Y over there. So let's say that's supposed to be a by the opposing party as confidential or highly confidential information, and all copies of such documents, and shall destroy all extracts, notes, compilations, and or data files containing such information. Each party shall provide a certification to as such return or destruction within the 60-day period. However, attorneys shall be entitled to retain a set of all documents filed within the court and all correspondence generated in connection with the action. Okay, got that. And then we're going to end here with saying that any party may apply to the court for a modification of the protective order, and nothing in this protective order shall be construed to prevent a party from seeking such further provisions enhancing or limiting confidentiality as may be appropriate. Additionally, no designation of confidentiality shall mean that the party making the designation is entitled to any presumption or determination that the information is protected under Minnesota law or by contract solely because of the confidentiality designation, except as provided by this protective order. No action taken in accordance with the protective order shall be construed as a waiver of any claim or defense in the action of any position as to discoverability or admissibility of evidence. Nothing in this protective order shall apply to documents and the information which may be designated as confidential or highly confidential information if the information is publicly available or lawfully obtained by a party from a person who lawfully possesses the information. The obligations imposed by this protective order shall survive the termination of this action. Okay, and that is by the court and the Honorable Michelle Davis, Judge of the District Court. Okay, now look at that. Look at that error there. Waiver. Waive 3R. I mean, honestly, doesn't anybody proofread anything anymore? I don't know. Interesting, isn't it? Now, I guess that, let's see. When did, because this was still when it was under Michelle Davis, and this was February, so that was before they moved to the new courthouse, I believe. I think that they moved to the new courthouse in May. So I think they just did shifting and seeing who was going to take over the old judge that was retired right around that point in time. I think that they went and just looked at Judge Halsey's caseload and reassessed who could do what when, and with the timelines, who would be best suited. It was a mess. It was a mess is what was going on in our courtrooms, and there was a big situation. I will talk about the situation and what happened at a certain point. Essentially, we had a person who was really being hurt in our community by the way he felt he was being mistreated by doctors for his pain. And he was seen as a problem and a challenge to the justice system. And so he started putting out signs protesting the police and the doctors and whatnot. And he was getting a lot of trouble in the court. And he was not able to have a doctor help him with the pain that he was in physically or mentally. And sadly, he walked into the clinic and fired a pew pew that ended the life of an innocent nurse and injured others. And the judge that should have retired long before had been the one making some of the calls in that. And so we had a terrible incident in our community. And that had a lot to do with what was going on with the big shift and the judge being pushed out, shall we say. He needed to go. He was problematic. He was making the wrong calls, literally. I mean, basically, people thought he was senile. And then when the big changes came with the new courthouse and everything, things are going better. But the system the system everywhere is broken, as we all know. But we had a lot of growing pains, I guess, as our community is getting bigger. But that's some of the backstory and why the judges were shuffling things back and forth, and caseloads, etc., etc. Why some of the calls here were going unanswered from the attorneys as they were trying to schedule. They were literally switching over all of the systems from a new courthouse. All of the phones, all of the computers, everything. And updating the systems and literally and figuratively updating the people, if you will. So that's the story, and that's the backstory, and this will be called part 22, and then the part where I did that might end up getting deleted will just be little bits and bobs. And thank you for listening to this, and that kind of gives you some insight on the protective order and the things that we can't see. Now, like I say, the things we can see are pretty good, and where I have all of the answers to what she did in the what she answered in the interrogatories, I think that's going to be really, really telling as to where she's getting this information and how. And I'm looking forward to it. So I hope you all are too. Please like, subscribe, share. And you can always buy me coffee. My Cash App is Tabitha Jane 13. I mean, I operate a little better when I'm caffeinated. Thanks for listening. Please like and share. Thank you. Bye-bye.